This is episode 21 of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm Jeff Kaiser. My guest for September 2021 is someone who is known throughout the art world, is an artist, illustrator, and a musician, singer-songwriter, guitarist, known for such bands as Nutrajet, the Screaming Iguanas of Love, the Nicoteens, and Jaded Bovine, amongst possible others that we might get into. Let's welcome into the podcast, Greg Reinel. Greg, how are you?
All right, pleasure.
It's great to have you on. I know that you have been around for quite a while, so you've got some things that I'm sure we'll get into over the course of your journey, not just in the music world, but also in the art world as well. So it's really neat stuff.
Faithful Girl Friday helping me out. Thank you, Rob.
Excellent. Good deal. Good deal. So is that your studio that you're in right now?
This is where the magic happens.
Very nice. Very nice. What kind of gear do you normally use? Like what's around you there?
Well, there's a pencil over there. I think I use those. I give you. I don't see my little mod. You want to see my 3D house of tools?
There you go.
Is that working?
Yeah, it works. So you can see it. Yeah. It's coming through.
That's a Waffle House plate, a collectible Waffle House plate from the 80s.
Nice.
I got during my travels. And that's where I keep the tools.
Very cool. I'm sure on the road, that was a place quite common to stop at, was a Waffle House.
I love Waffle House. I've never had a bad Waffle House meal, and they always friendly. I never understood people knock Waffle House. Great place.
Me too. I actually have a collection that I've had over the years of, if you remember, especially in the 80s and 90s, Waffle House used to have the jukebox at their restaurants, and they would have Waffle House songs. I collect those.
Waffle House songs, Waffle House rock.
Yes, I collect those 45s.
And that's all I would play when I went in there.
There you go. Awesome. That's funny. So did you grow up in Florida? Is that kind of where you got your early start, kind of growing up down there?
I was born here in Bradenton, and my dad was a design engineer. So we would live maybe 6 months to a year somewhere and then pack up and we'd be off to his next job. So very early on, I got used to traveling. I love traveling. I love, just seeing different places. I love driving, don't like flying. But yeah, born here, and then we moved out a lot of different places, and then ended up back here in 1983. I had like a half a year of my senior high school year to finish here. Graduated over right down the road at Palm Bay High. And, when I got here, coming from a suburb of Chicago, this was like paradise again, seeing girls in bikinis, things like that. So the first thing I did is I was looking, to start a band. And one of the first guys I met here was a guy named Casey Chaos. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Disorderly
Conduct, of course.
Amen. Yeah. And I had met him through a guy who worked at the Melbourne Square Mall here at a record bar. Do you remember Record Bar?
I do. I don't remember. I was too young to go, but I've read a lot about the Record Bar. And
I am just another old guy reminiscing about the old punk rock days. But anyway, I met him. And he needed another guitarist in his band. He wanted a second guitarist. So I joined up with them. And this is like 1983 going into 84, and got to see a little bit of this, the gigs I played with them in Gainesville or South Florida at Flynn's, seeing some of the scene that was starting to happen down there at the time. In Miami, I loved the Screaming Sneakers. You heard them?
Yeah, of course.
There was a band down there we played with one time. They were kind of like a New York Dolls glam rock band. They were called TV Agent. So, there was a lot of cool things going on. And, no internet, none of that, no social media. You just kind of like-minded people kind of found each other somehow. And a couple of my other friends ended up joining Disorderly Conduct. And then Casey wanted to go in more of like a metal, a real dark direction. And I was just a budding songwriter. I was starting to write songs. That's the whole reason I became a musician in the first place. I could hear music, but I didn't play anything. So it's the classic, story of guy has shitty guitar in closet, needs to, learn how to play guitar. And I pulled it out and I taught myself guitar. I thought, how hard can it be? Well, it turned out to be a little harder than I thought. But anyway, I wanted to write songs.
Right.
And so Casey and I, although we're great friends now, we were sort of butting heads. We were just, we were kids, wanted to do different things. And I left the band right before they recorded that first album. Actually, I think I had recorded some of the 4-track stuff, but anyway.
Okay.
And I played for a short period of time in a band called the Body Bags.
Nice.
I think it was less than a year, but anyway, the drummer in this band was a guy named Mike Owens, who's now played with, he was with the Janitortures eventually.
Oh, okay.
Mike Owens, and he was always saying, you got to come see my other band in Cocoa. I play with this band in Cocoa. They're called the Jaded Bovines. And one night we were having a rehearsal and Mike brought a guy named John Archibald down to the rehearsal to see us. And he came up to me and he was like, I really like your guitar playing. You should come check out our band. So maybe the next weekend, my memory's foggy, I ended up going up to Cocoa and there's John and Mike, and in walks this guy with a Fender bass, black motorcycle jacket, and unplugged headphones around his neck. And I'm thinking, man, that's a really cool look. He looked like he was in the Clash. And that turned out to be Mark Zayas, who went on to be in Rocket 88. So they had another guitarist and I started rehearsing with them. And there was this whole little scene there, like this whole group of people would all converge on this warehouse in the middle of nowhere in Cocoa. And one of those people was Buddy Bass, who was doing the scene reports for Maximum Rock and Roll at the time. And he's chronicled a lot of Florida, punk and rock history.
Right.
And Buddy had seen a lot of bands. And I guess one weekend he showed up and he was listening to us and he turned around and he was like, you guys have gotten really good. And that made me feel good because someone like Buddy, could offer constructive criticism. And the band was good. It was really good. And we started playing gigs, some really crazy gigs. And
I can imagine the music was definitely hardcore punk.
Yeah, it was. But, me and Marco were writing. I was always a melodic writer, so I would bring that stuff in thinking they might not like it, and John really liked it. So the one recording we did, it sounds like the Stooges, but it's really good, but it doesn't sound like what we sounded like live. And I love that band. It was a lot of fun, but again, I'm a kid at the time. I think I'm living in my car.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I would go rehearse with the band by day, and then at night go to my girlfriend's for a place to hang out. And I think it was just a crazy lifestyle. I had my guitar, clothes, and all my gear in the back, and that's how I lived. I mean, it was real. And the band rolled along for a while, and I think I left once, and then I got a Pell Grant to go to the Art Institute of Chicago. So I was thinking of going to art school up there. But really the only reason I would have done that is to join a band, to find another band. And also one of my favorite bands were from that area, Naked Ray Gun. And at the time I loved that band. And they were looking for a guitarist. And I remember calling their manager, I think, and wanting to audition to be in Naked Ray Gun.
Oh, wow. How cool that would have been.
Yeah. And anyway, I stayed with the Bovines for a bit, and then you know, by this time I had done enough punk bands, you know, I'd done it a lot, and I was starting to write some different stuff, and I was just punching around for something different, not sure what I really wanted to do. And one of the early guitarists in Disorderly Conduct was a guy named Stuart Coleman. And he and I became really good friends, although we're really polar opposites. He's more of a shut-in, like a recluse, and I'm more wanting to get out and tour and travel the world and see things. But for whatever reason, we wrote songs together really well. And we started coming up with this concept of just, you know, this band. I think just some of the crazy names we had. We had like the Screaming Jesus All Stars, you know, and we wanted to dress really sharp and almost like an evangelist thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, we were writing songs. We didn't even have a band. And we were starting to create all the art around this band, create this band's world. And I think one night, one of us said, you know, Screaming Iguanas, and the other one went of Love. And we just started cracking up. We just thought, all right, you know, I didn't really want to name the band. I thought it was stupid. But we started creating this artwork and posting it. And there used to be a club at the Holiday Inn here, and we were there one night, and we got into an elevator, and there were these girls in there, and they asked us if we'd ever heard of Screaming Iguanas of Love. And we were like, wow, this is working. And we don't even have a band. You know, it's just the writing songs. So back then things would travel really quick, word of mouth, you know. But then Stuart, we were writing one day, and he said, I met these two guys, and they're brothers, and they're a rhythm section. They come as a package deal, bass and drums. You know, around here then that was unheard of. It was pretty difficult to find a good drummer or a good bass player. And so we met these guys, and it turns out they're Mario Andretti's nephews, David and
Wow.
JT. Yeah. And boy, they're schooled, incredible musicians, right? The bass player played a fretless bass with his eyes closed. And anyway, we had like an Insta band overnight. We have this band, and we get together, and it just clicks. You know, we were writing a lot of really eclectic stuff, you know, our tastes, you know, whatever, Bowie. I listened to a lot of Elvis Costello. So we were all over actually probably too eclectic, you know, from rockabilly to, you know, whatever. And it was real easy at the time to get press around here because there really wasn't a lot going on.
Right.
So if you were a band playing your own music, you stood out really quickly. And that's what happened. We got a lot of press really quick. And hopefully I'm moving along at a brisk enough pace.
Yeah. The Mario Andretti story, is that kind of where the Nitro Burden 20 cars, like that whole came about?
I grew up going to drag racing with my family.
Okay.
So, you know, that was just right. That's like a real story. But I don't want to start going off in too many directions.
Sure.
But anyway,
yeah.
we had this band, you know, and for whatever reason it worked. And it was really different. And there was a place in the Atlantic called the Wine Gallery. And it was just a little wine bar. You could probably fit 25 people in there. But this guy, Cliff, loved all this stuff that was happening over here. So he started having the bands on the weekends. It was us, Brave New Tribe. And he would just pack this place out. It was sort of like the Melbourne version of CBGB's. And then, of course, you had FIT, the radio station that was starting to prop all this up. So right away, there was like a built-in audience. We were getting press. And, you know, we thought, this is really easy. You know, this is kind of a cakewalk. And then we had a booking agent in South Florida who was booking us college gigs, which paid really well. And we started heading over to Orlando and Atlanta, you know, like every band does, throwing your shit in a van and driving around. And I loved it growing up traveling. That's what I wanted to do. That's the first thing about music that made me want to do it. If it was just recording records, you know, in my home studio, I wouldn't be interested. It was the energy of traveling and playing live that always drew me to music in the first place.
I believe the Screaming Iguanas of Love, I believe the I think was it the full length record, I want to say, was also put out by Ichiban Records. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, that was what happened was Stuart had some things going on. It wasn't working. And it got to the point, Stuart was a really accomplished guitarist and an amazing songwriter. And, but he kind of, when he had things going on, he was losing interest. So I kind of told the guys, you know, keep him or me, make a decision one way or the other. I'll leave or he can stay. And surprisingly, they picked me. And so, you know, I wouldn't call myself anywhere near an accomplished guitarist then. My interest was writing songs. But very quickly, you know, I thought, well, I can carry this as a three-piece. If Paul Weller can do it with the Jam, why can't I do it? Stupid kid, right? But what happened was it made me become an accomplished guitarist really quickly. And so the first album, when that came out, I think it was 1990, we had recorded that at Bob Greenlee's King Snake Records over in Sanford. And Rick Bailey, amazing engineer, he did that record for us. And we got to deal with Ichiban. There was a girl there named Kim Sade, and somebody threw our demo tape from King Snake in a shoebox, literally, of cassettes. And she pulled it out looking for something new and heard it and liked it. And that's how that happened. And so by the time the first vinyl record came out, yeah, we were a three-piece by then, and even more eclectic, from rockabilly to all sorts of Americana and power pop. It was too eclectic, actually, thinking about it. But, you know, I was a young kid, a songwriter, just trying everything, you know.
Right.
It was a whole world out there for me.
How did your influences kind of evolve, kind of going back to the early years of like the more hardcore punk, and also, you know, your songwriting too, and then into the more melodic, more rock oriented music?
I loved some of the hardcore bands. I love that stuff, and I like the fast stuff, but, you know, I really like the stuff that I could dance to. You know, it doesn't matter who the artist is. Like back then, you know, once everybody around me in my circle of friends were like, okay, this is punk, you know, it's like this. It's almost like you weren't allowed to like, you know, Jeff Beck. What, Jeff Beck isn't cool now because punk? No, it doesn't work that way for me. I like ABBA. I like Jeff Beck. I love Todd Rundgren. All of this stuff, soul music, to me, it was all just a big, you know, stew that I could draw on. You know, if I would listen to a band like the Jam and hear them do some soul cover, I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that song. And I'd go back and look up all this Stax Volt soul and Motown, go to the source. And, you know, the Jam's version was usually cool, but not as cool as that stuff, all that Northern soul. So there was a whole bunch of stuff I liked. And so after the Iguanas did a couple records, I get bored easily. You know, once things are kind of rolling along the same way, I get really bored. And I had a bunch of these new songs I was writing, and they were a little more, I guess I'd say, commercial, more power pop, but that's what I wanted to do at the time.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to break up. We liked playing together still, and we just decided overnight to change the name of the band and just start at square one again. So Dave came in and he held up a cigarette pack. He's like, what about the Nicoteens? And that's great, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's literally what we did. We just changed our name and went off in another direction. And by this time I was in Orlando.
And that, and with the Nicoteens, you put out I think the first 7-inch came out in 1994. Yeah. What do you remember of that record?
Rick Bailey, man, the stuff we were doing in King Snake, he was amazing. The production value he was doing on it was really, really nice, you know. And we had like a whole album basically done. We just needed to mix it and add stuff, and the band didn't last that long. So we got the EP out and we were on a couple of compilations, But at the time there was sort of like this power pop resurgence going on. There was sort of an everything resurgence. And there was a guy in St. Louis named Jordan Oakes. He had a fanzine, a power pop fanzine called Yellow Pills. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
And he would write about all these kind of basically, melodic rock bands around the country. And then he started putting out compilation CDs, and he put us on, I think, volume 2. And we got a lot of attention from that. And, again, I was getting bored. I think I just felt like it had run its course with the Nicoteens and the Iguanas and all that. And I just was kind of tired of it and wanted to do something else. I was living in Orlando by then. And so I broke up the band. And I just wanted to do something. Every time I start something new, I want to do something I haven't done before. I just don't want to get together another band. That doesn't interest me. And
right.
There was a band we used to play with called Psycho from Texas. And their drummer, Susie Dozier, this girl, she was a great drummer. She was simple. She had great meter. And she was in this band with her husband. Anyway, they broke up, and Susie and I were friends. And we decided to get together a power trio, just with our biggest influences, more like a Sex Pistols meets Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick is my all-time favorite band. Anybody who knows me knows that. And so we got together with Chuck Zayas from Rocket 88. He wanted to do something aside from Rocket 88. And it was a good little power trio. And we had a couple of different names to start with. They were all bad. And then
what were some of the ones you remember?
I think I was watching The Kids in the Hall, so I named the band the Eradicators. I don't know if you remember that skit. I must sound old, but it was this guy, the Eradicators. It just sounded like some spy TV show from the 60s.
Nice.
We had a couple of stupid names. And anyway, Chuck had obligations with Rocket 88, so he had to go. And it was just me and Susie. So we started looking for bass players. And at that time, the mid 90s, it was all kind of this slacker stuff. And, some of that was fine. Actually, I hated it. And everybody who rehearsed with us wanted to noodle around. And we just wanted we wanted like a heavy, simple bass player. We couldn't find one. So I got 2 amps. I bought a bass amp, and I thought, well, I'll split my signal and run my guitar through a bass amp just to get some low end in this so we can rehearse. Well, like a week into rehearsing that way, Susie and I were like, this is pretty cool. We should just do this. We should just be this power duo. Now, the White Stripes, we didn't know anything about them at that point. There was no, that duo thing that happened. There was none of that. I'm not saying we were like the first rock duo, but, there were other ones, but
sure,
we didn't know. And we just thought, well, let's give this a go. So I kept improving the rig until it was like a stereo guitar rig with a huge Ampeg bass amp. And I got it to where if you walked into a club and we were playing and, you were Ray Charles or Blind, you wouldn't know that this wasn't a full band. And
that's right.
It just worked. And that was the different thing I was looking for. I wanted a challenge, and it changed my whole style of guitar playing because it was a custom set of strings. It was a rig that you had to learn to play the amps more than the guitar. You couldn't just hit the strings and a clean bass note came out. You had to have a different form of attack. I don't know if that makes sense. Are you a musician? It was difficult to play, and but for whatever reason, it worked for us. And that was the thing I was looking for. And we started playing out and very quickly got noticed for that, Some of the early gigs were funny because other musicians would come up to us and they would be really hostile. Like, why don't you have a bass player? Like we were trying to make bass players obsolete, which wasn't the case at all. But I would be like, this must be a bass player. And it was usually, but people seemed to be musicians seemed to kind of be angry that we did that. It wasn't, you know, dissing bass players. It was just, this is what works for us,
Right.
you know? So we played a Virgin Megastore. We did a 6-song EP, which I thought came out really well. And we played, at the time, people in Orlando who remember this Virgin Megastore out at downtown Disney, was it? They were starting.
Yeah, I was there once.
Yeah, they were starting to support some of the local bands, and our EP came out, and they said, "Why don't you come do an in-store here?" Bad
Nice.
idea.
Yeah.
And they put us in the coffee shop upstairs, and I don't know if you ever saw us play. Nutrajet were just a wall of guitar, just a fist. And they put us in a coffee shop. What a spectacle. What happened at that spectacle was this guy from Scotland who was in Tones on Tail had a brother who had a record label. And he brought our CD back there and said, "I saw this guy and this girl and this duo playing. They were amazing. Check this out." So one night at 4 a.m, I get a call from this very Scottish guy who I can't understand, wanting to put our record out over there. We're like, yeah, okay. So he put it out over there in the UK. He had distribution, and he wanted to get us over to England to tour. And around this time, Susie had other things going on in her life, and she left the band. So now, you know, I have a record out there. We had a record out there. He's trying to set up a tour. And once again, I have no band. I have me. So I think that week, is this getting boring?
No, keep going.
Seems boring to me. That week, a longtime friend of mine named Jeff Wood, I had known him back in my Iguanas days. People in Tampa, St. Pete, over that area will definitely know Jeff Wood. We were longtime friends, and he called me and said his band Spiller were playing at Johnny's Rockin' Bistro in Orlando. You know, he wanted to hang out with me.
Okay.
I went out there, walked in, and as I'm walking in, they're playing, and I'm looking at Jeff, and I'm going, well, there's my fill-in drummer to at least do this tour in the UK. And I said, you know, would you be interested in filling in just for this tour? He goes, give me the CD. I gave it to him. He came over a few days later, and we got together. I had rented a warehouse, and it was like, we didn't even say anything. We just started playing these songs. He had learned them all. And what a powerhouse drummer. This guy was fucking amazing. Mm-hmm. You know, I always said he could have been in any band. I don't know why he stayed with me. He was just a force of nature, and he had learned all this material. And we lined up a couple gigs before we went over to England. And I remember we played the first gig, and it was amazing. It's just like, we just locked. You know, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it really was like everything I had been looking for in a bandmate. We didn't have to discuss things. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey man, I'm in." I said, "Yeah, I know. Thanks." He goes, "No, I'm in for good. I love this." And what Jeff liked about the duo thing is he was a big personality. So it gave him a chance to be the drummer, to be a front man too. And he was also, a good songwriter. He could arrange things in his head. So he took the reins. He looked at it like, I'm a front man too. And that's when like the real chemistry of Nutrajet happened, because now you've got these two guys who are just like, for whatever reason, when we get together, we can argue and we create these songs. And when the door closes at rehearsal, we're still great friends.
Right.
And that's the most difficult thing in the world to find if you're in a band, you know?
I agree.
You know?
I agree. I think in a lot of things, when it comes to anything that's potentially business, it's hard to always make it work when it comes to your friendship too, you know? So
it was all a ride with Jeff, you know?
Yeah.
And so we started recording a new record, and we did 2 tours with Bubble. Bubble were a glam rock band with Bam, who's was the drummer in Dogs D'Amour, and Cher, who was in Vixen. And they had a new band called Bubble, and that's how we ended up over in England. They invited us to play with them.
Okay.
The open. And after the second tour over there, we got back, and whenever we were out touring on the road here, playing gigs, Jeff was always complaining of headaches, and I didn't think anything about it. But we came back from England the second time. I think we played a gig in St. Petersburg, and then I came back to Orlando, and I got a call one night that he's in the hospital and he's collapsed from a brain tumor. So one minute I'm playing with, this incredible powerhouse drummer personality. The next minute I'm helping the guy get dressed, so like that, it's done. And I don't know, I was just, I was completely like a zombie.
Yeah.
About it now, just like that whole week, it's just like everything that you want to happen when you're playing music. We were kind of making a living. We weren't rich, but we were being paid well. We had a record deal. We were getting hooked up to go over and live in England for 6 months and just tour England and Europe. And then boom, somebody just yanks the rug out like that. So he eventually was getting better. They removed the tumor, and this guy who lost the motor skills, and I think it was his left arm, had to teach himself to play drums again.
Wow.
He did it. And
wow.
A couple of years later, we get back together and we're rehearsing and we're going to start playing again. And it was almost like no time had passed at all. And we get together and he is saying, my leg feels numb, and not long after that, tumor came back and it was malignant, and that was done. I lost my best friend in the world, and all that we were doing, it's just gone. So I had to do something, and that's where the art started.
Yeah, I'm definitely sorry to hear.
No, you just,
I didn't know if he was still alive or if something happened. So yeah,
2007 Jeff passed.
Yeah.
But that's I've been an artist my whole life. Yeah. That's something I always did. I kind of took it for granted. Well, now that's somebody you just don't replace in a band and move along. I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
And I wanted to do something else. And I had always done the artwork in all the bands I was involved in. That was part of it. I was just the guy with those skills. That's what I did. So, I was really influenced by the 60s rock art, all the psychedelic rock art. So
sure.
Everything I've been in, I always enjoyed doing the poster art and making those special, trying to make them special. If you look at a lot of the old punk rock flyers, they look cool now because of the aesthetic. But back then, you just saw 50 of these things. They all kind of blended together. So my idea was to do like an illustrated poster for every gig to make it stand out. And so that's how I ended up going into doing rock posters. It wasn't like, a job you applied for, rock poster designer.
Right.
I'd been doing. I didn't think anybody, would be interested in these things beyond the show.
Sure.
What happened was I started going into record stores and seeing that these people were putting them up and collecting them and then selling some of them. So I think the first gig I did with that was Supergrass at the Social in Orlando in 2003. It's the first time I did a silkscreen poster, and the band loved it. And there was a website at the time called gigposters.com.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
You were on there?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I bought things off there.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, this is before social media really blew up. And sure. I went on Gig Posters because all of the poster artists who I loved, like Frank Kozik, Lindsay Coon Coop, they were all on there. And I'm like, well, this is a chance to really, learn from these guys. And I logged on there, got joined up, and there were all these great artists. And I was just like, wow. I thought I was like the only guy doing this kind of stuff,
Right.
until I saw like Frank Kozik, and they were silk screening these things, even better, and I loved it, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that kind of artwork. And so I got on gig posters, and anyway, they started doing this annual rock poster show at Bumbershoot in Seattle called Flat Stock, where you would just like a Comic-Con convention, but for rock poster artists.
Right.
And you'd go there and set up a booth, the deal. And I went there in 2000. I think my first one was 2003, and I met a guy named Andy Stern, Diesel Fuel Prince, and he liked my work so much, he said, I'll print your stuff. You get the gigs, I'll print your stuff. We'll split the runs. So I went into House of Blues, and promotions department at the time, there was a woman named Heather Fritz, and there was Chuck Dinkins, worked in promotions. So I said, I want to do a poster series like the old Fillmore or Grande Ballroom in Detroit, do a House of Blues poster series. And right away they got it. They totally got it. And they just turned me loose. They would get approval from the bands, give me the gig details. They said, as long as you put a little House of Blues logo and our ticket information, do what you want. Well, and it was amazing. I mean, like overnight, I'm doing these posters for all of these bands and having to really, again, learning on the job, another world right away.
One of the first posters I ever saw of yours, which if you would ask me back then, would I be interviewing you now? I probably said, probably not. But I saw Elvis Costello at the House of Blues in 05, and I remember your art, and I loved it. It was such a cool piece. And then not realizing later on, oh, this is the same Greg Reinel who is in all these other bands that I was aware of too. I just didn't put two and two together at that time, and then knowing that later was really neat. So that was how did that come about? Because that was one of my favorite shows to see. He was so good that night.
Well, going back a bit,
Yeah.
When I started doing this, I didn't have time to silk screen posters. I was just illustrating them. I had no computer, no Mac, none of that crap. It was all hand lettered, everything. And I really love Gary Grimshaw. He did posters for the Stooges, MC5, the Grande Ballroom in Detroit. And that's how I learned. I would look at his stuff, and Gary would get like $50 and do a poster overnight. And this guy amazed me. And excuse me. Anyway, that's kind of what I was doing. I learned to ink with a brush. I really liked Coop, and I wanted to ink with a brush so I could do this stuff real fast because these deadlines were real quick. You didn't have a lot of time to think about them.
Yeah.
And Elvis Costello, when he was coming to House of Blues, I guess they said it went out no posters because there's a lot of people doing this. They just do the poster and they sell it, and anyway, it said no posters. And I went, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do this anyway. And if they don't like it, fine, I'll burn them, whatever. And my favorite Elvis Costello album is Get Happy. So I based the design around that. And brought the poster in, and he loved it. So much they put, he used it as part of the design element on his website.
Oh, wow.
So, cool. Back then, I was learning from guys like Frank Kozik, Uncle Charlie, Lindsey Kuhn, Coop. You didn't get permission. You just did it. And the band, either they liked it or they didn't. That's where I was coming from. Now everything is micromanaged. It's, do this, put this logo, Luckily, when I started, there was very little of that.
Right.
Over branding of stuff. Most people just like the art and would just turn me loose, which is sometimes a bad idea.
What were the origins of the Stainboy name?
Oh, I was, I don't use that anymore. I was looking for a pen name just something simple, you know, that people would remember. It's kind of like, you know, kind of like the guys in punk rock bands, like Darby Crash and the Germs. It fit the aesthetic of what I was doing at the time. You know, all the bands I was doing stuff for, like Nashville Pussy. There were a lot of punk rock and roll bands, and I just wanted something simple. And I had a friend who always called me Stainboy. I won't tell the story. And I hated the nickname. I hated it. And of course, when you hate a nickname, it's usually accurate. I just thought that makes, you know, for what I'm doing, you know, ink on paper,
Yeah.
art, this works. So I just Stainboy, it seemed to work. And so I went with it. And it did work, you know. It was easy to recognize.
Absolutely. And you had the book too. How did that come about? Vicious Intent.
Well, that was after a lot of years of traveling the country. I approached my art the same way I did as a band. I would load up all of my work,
Right.
and go around the country doing exhibits, you know, so that was real easy. And I was doing an exhibit in Portland, Oregon, and memory's getting foggy here. Chris Warner from Dark Horse Books showed up and said, you know, we're going to do a series of books with these rock poster artists. You know, would you be interested in us doing a book? Well, I was already going to do my own book, just self-publish it. And so we did a handshake deal. He said, when you get home, you know, start putting it together. You know, if I'm an artist, I should be able to design my own book, right? So that's what I did. I laid out the book with all my posters and sketches, and it was literally just, you know, handshake deal. Now I have a coffee table book. You know, when I started, I've been an artist my whole life. That's what I did as a kid. I drew all the time. I never thought I would have some coffee table art book out there. I didn't think anybody would be interested in the band flyers, you know,
Right.
beyond. No, it was all an accident, just complete fluke, you know. And my real first love was film posters. You know, I would look at those and think, you know, how do you get this job?
Right.
You know, in the 70s, you look at the posters are amazing. You know, guys like Drew Struzan. I was just like, how do I get this job? I didn't think I was good enough. That's part of it. I never thought I was good enough. I was always trying to get better, you know. Even now, I don't think I'm good enough.
I know, sure others would disagree, but I get it. So
I appreciate that. It's not a modesty thing.
Sure.
Of course, I want people to like the art and buy it, but personally, I never think I'm good enough. I'm always going forward. I don't care about what I've done. It's always what I'm working on now.
Sure. How did you get some of those gigs with you know, the Rob Zombie films and the Deadwood and the Clint Eastwood type stuff? Like, how did you get involved in that?
Back in the gig poster days, you know, when Mondo started up doing, I don't know if you're familiar with Mondo and the Rolling Road Show.
Yes.
Homo Draft House would do the Rolling Road shows.
Yes.
Back then, they were doing the Rolling Road Show series, you know, where they would show a film in the city it was shot in, like Bullet in San Francisco, or Escape from Alcatraz on Alcatraz Island. And they came on gig posters, and they wanted to hire some of the rock poster artists to do these film posters for the show. And they asked me to do a few. And I wanted to do them like traditional film posters, but I guess what they wanted from me more at the time, they said, is sort of a rock poster bent or vibe to these movie posters. So that's what I did. And I did like 5 or 6 of the early Mondos, and then just kept doing more rock posters. But eventually the rock poster thing, I love doing them, but it gets to be like a treadmill. You know, you are doing the same thing over and over. And as much as I love it, you know, it does start to be, you know, it gets a little boring after a while.
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to
Totally
do
get it.
something else. Yeah. And I think like 2018, a guy named Stephen Piper had a little film poster group, a movie poster group. And basically it's just private commissions where a group of people get together and they go, nothing really cool has ever been done for this, low budget movie or TV show or whatever. And they hire a guy like me to do it. And the first gig he gave me was The Devil's Rejects. And, I knew nothing about that movie. I'd seen a couple of Rob Zombie films, but I hadn't seen that one. And I watched the movie and I was like, why haven't I seen this? This is great. That was my first gig for motherfucking genre screen print commissions. And now I'm booked solid with commission work. That's all I do. Mm. What I love about it is it gives me a chance to, it's not like hard deadline work, so I can think things through and I can work at my own pace and I can do work that I think I shouldn't be doing.
Right.
And try new things, push myself more.
How long would you say it takes you to go from start to finish on a project?
Remember, have you ever seen rock poster artist Emick's work? Emick. One time he said,
Maybe.
if you give me 6 months, I'll take 6 months. If you give me 1 week, I'll take 1 week. That's kind of how I work. If you give me 2 weeks, I'll come up with something for you in 2 weeks, but it won't be as good. I don't think this
right.
A little time to think about it. So these Deadwood took a long time, months drawing that. My personality, for whatever reason, is detail obsessive. So even if I'm trying to just impressionistic or whatever, I just naturally zone in on details. So, they can.
Are you watching, like, do you watch any like of the series and even the movies? Like, do you watch them in advance before you start diving in?
Yeah, I'd seen Deadwood 3 times over already before I even started this. I love Ian McShane. Long before he was in Deadwood, I loved him.
Right.
A lot of British culture and actors and whatnot. And yeah, I watched the movie over and over. I dissect it, because it's retroactive. You're not trying to advertise the film. You're doing something for the fans, and you want to put all those little references in, and the only thing I sometimes have a hard time with is, everybody wants their favorite likeness on the print. So it's like you end up doing like 90 likenesses, a bunch of heads. So I always try to avoid that as much as possible. But with Deadwood, you just couldn't.
Right.
Because there's so many great characters. So I think we ended up drawing the line at like 24, And but that's what I love doing about this the most, is doing the character likenesses freehand. There's a lot of artists out there now who work with the Wacom tablet digitally, do some incredible work, but it's a personal for me to draw freehand and to be able to capture our likeness that way.
With so many people buying your art and stuff like that, obviously fans can reach out to you. What's been some of the nicest things you've heard from people when they bought your art?
Just the fact that they're buying it, framing it, putting it in their home. I've had a lot of people, I sell all my originals. They're like, why do you sell your original work? I think, was it Soriyama? Soriyama said, I don't want to collect my own art. That's the greatest compliment, that it's out there in the world. That people like it enough to buy it and frame it in their home.
Right.
I like when I post the process of what I'm working on, post the process, and people start getting excited about the end result. That's a kick. It's never about what I've done. It's always about what I'm working on now and moving forward with. I can certainly look back. I look back at all of my old rock posters. I would do completely different today, but I wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
I asked John Lennon, like, if you could re-record any Beatles song, what would it be? He said all of them.
Right. I totally get that. Yeah.
That's the energy from that time.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
That's the German nitpicker in me wanting to redo everything, right? Make it better, but you never make it better.
Yeah. And you definitely did a lot of posters for a lot of bands, a lot of really, really great bands too. And thinking about all the rock posters that you did, was there one in particular, because of the band, you were like, man, this is cool. Like, I love this band growing up, and now I have a chance to design a poster for them. Like that's
Easy,
pretty awesome.
easy, cheap trick. But there was a lot of bands that I wasn't a fan of before that I became a fan of because I met them. And when you see the people behind that music, it makes you appreciate it more, like Seven Dust.
Hmm.
I liked the single I heard, but I didn't know a lot about Seven Dust.
Sure.
And that's liked my work so much they had me do a poster every New Year's Eve show. And I came to really appreciate the band, what the band were about, and their singer especially. It was amazing.
Yeah.
That's what I really enjoy doing now. I love taking on a band or a movie or something that I may not be aware of or even like. That's the true test. If I can take something that I may not like, and I may respect it. There's a lot of bands I don't like, but I respect what they're doing. I understand why they have a fan base.
Sure.
If I can on something like that and make it good, that's a real thing to me. That's a judge of how good I am.
Yeah. You had been doing a YouTube series too, and it seemed like it kind of like stopped and hasn't really had any new. I really liked it though. So it was such a cool idea to see your art kind of start to finish and you working on it and also talking about it. I mean, I love documentary style YouTube series like that, and I thought it was just neat. Is there any reason why you just because you were busy or that you stopped doing that?
Continue it. I had a lot of life changes. I have a new daughter, 6 months old. In the span of about 3 or 4 years, a lot happened. I've been I want to start doing the videos again. It's hard though, you have to, in this world we're in now, you have to endlessly promote yourself. And I don't mind doing promotion, but I don't like doing it 24/7. And if you're an artist now, you're not just doing the art anymore. Social media and all that, you can spend 3 days doing that.
Right.
For me, it's a time suck, a lot of it. But I enjoy doing that because a lot of people were just asking to see the process. I didn't think they'd be interested, but apparently they are. So I'll keep doing some of it. I think sometimes I should post less of what I'm doing and then just post the end result. But it seems people like seeing that process. To me, It's just what shit I go through while I'm trying to get to the end.
Yeah. I think with music it's the same way. I think fans love to see the writing process in the studio and the outtakes and the alternate takes and the 25 takes, and people like,
Yeah, I'm that guy.
It's cool,
I buy the fucking Stooges Funhouse box set and listen to one of those takes. I'm that guy. Yeah. That's why we did the Stooges show.
Yeah. Talk about that.
That started in the mid 90s. Me and Ken Shahidi from the Hate Bombs. We were driving around going to record stores one day and we're like talking about how great a record Funhouse is. We were like, we should put together a band and just do Funhouse live. Yeah, let's do that. And then we never did it. We promptly never did it. But then a couple of years ago, he goes, man, let's do it. And the idea wasn't to be like just imitate this. It was to just get that vibe.
Yeah.
And so these guys, Trauma Lords, they learned all this material really fast in a month. And we did those shows and they were great. They were a lot of fun because I got to drop the guitar and just sing. I loved it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my stuff. It wasn't me sweating about songwriting. The great songs are already there. And there'll come a time soon when you won't be able to see Iggy, or we just wanted to do it for kicks, and it's been one of the most enjoyable things I've done musically in a long time. I'll gladly do it again.
Yeah. Seeing some of the video, you could tell you're having a really good time, and it looks like you were in it, man. Like it's like you were Iggy for that.
Yeah, I didn't want to, I told myself what I wanted to do was do a little Iggy, a little Jim Morrison, like channel all kind of Elektra Records thing, little MC5 into it.
Yeah.
Make it our own. I don't want to be just like some dumb tribute band.
Sure.
But it was a blast. And we did a second show here. I did an exhibit here in Melbourne, O'Galley. at the Standard Collective. And, that was a blast. I hope the guys want to do it again, because I do, and it was a lot of fun.
Did you do a poster for any of those gigs?
Yeah, the poster for both. I'll give it to you later. You can
Yeah.
pop up on the screen when this airs.
Yeah, man, totally.
Funhouse influence poster, and actually that happened because of Jim Faraday. A couple, I think, like 2017, I was doing an exhibit over in Orlando, over there, and Jim Faraday put the show on, and I got up with the Tremolords and did a couple of Stooges tunes, and Jim goes, "Man, we got to get a show together with that," and he kept badgering me, always pestering me to do this, and then finally we did it.
Yeah.
Love Jim. He's a great guy.
Yeah, great execution. It was I think it's something really neat that, especially in Florida, I don't know if there's a lot of Stooges, tribute kind of stuff going on. So it's nice that you kind of came together. And I think,
yeah, the whole idea though was, you hear great Stooges covers, but to me they always sound like, heavy metal bands doing them. We wanted that like 70s vibe to it,
right.
And getting the saxophone in there and everything else, it was just a lot of fun. And the guys worked really hard. We all worked real hard to learn a lot of songs really quickly. But we also wanted that kind of unbalanced, like the Stooges were unpredictable. You listen to like the Funhouse box set with all these takes, and they're all completely different. And so that's the way we approached it. We'd learn the framework of the song and then just let it go. Like whatever happens is going to happen. And it worked.
Nice. Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Good deal. Yeah. I got a couple of random questions I'm going to throw at you here to kind of round things out. So, you having been, grew up going to shows and that sort of thing. Out of all the shows you saw over the years, concerts, what have you, what band or show would you say was one of your favorites to see live?
Oh my God. Nutrajet opening for Cheap Trick, 1999, House of Blues. Best night of my life playing music. The band loved us.
Wow.
We were told, like, Cheap Trick fans hate the opening band, so we expected to be hated. We didn't care. We just were so happy. I remember House of Blues giving us that gig. Like, do you want to open for Cheap Trick? And I'm like, well, how much, what does it pay? I would have done it for free.
Sure.
So we got paid, it was great. And just meeting those guys, super cool guys, and having the balls to play Lookout, opening for Cheap Trick to a Cheap Trick crowd, having the crowd dig us. And we gained a fan base overnight from that. So when we started going around Florida, elsewhere, people who saw us at that gig in, say, Tampa would come see us over there with, the other people. It was a blast. Awesome. They were just cool. And Bunny Carlos walking up to Susie, shaking her hand.
How cool is that? Yeah.
I'm a kid, in suburb of Chicago in the 70s, listening to Live at Budokan. And now I'm, opening a show for these guys. To me, that just doesn't happen. And having a great gig. The thing I remember about that night is their road crew laughing at my gear as I set it up, the two-piece thing. Yeah. All these amps, they're like snickering until we did our sound check. They weren't laughing anymore. It was great.
That's great. Yeah. What a cool story, man. And especially that being one of your all-time favorite bands.
My favorite band, period.
Yeah. Favorite band. Yeah. Don't get better than that.
Doesn't, they are just, that's how I learned to write songs. Rick Nielsen is an amazing songwriter. People, they know, maybe, people just know Cheap Trick from I Want You to Want Me. That's not what the band's about. There's some really dark things going on there. Great writing, great songwriting.
Yeah, great stuff. And you having traveled both on the road and by air, thinking about some of your favorite places to go to, visit, play at, do art shows at, what places, what cities kind of come to mind as some of your favorites, and any memories of those places?
Austin, Texas, but it's all a blur. No, Austin. I love Austin. I love Texas.
Yeah.
I love I love driving, touring the country, seeing places. Seeing different places. It's just something about it to me. I always like to be moving, going somewhere. It's just who I am.
Yeah.
I'm never more at home. When I'm driving, it seems like on the way to somewhere, something new. So, I live now in Palm Bay, and it's great. I love it. I like having a place to come home to, but I love traveling.
Yeah.
You
Thinking about some of the most wildest shows that you've played, any one stand out, and perhaps why it was such a wild or crazy show?
know? The Jaded Bovines, 1980 something. That's the Hall, playing to what we didn't realize was a bunch of racist skinheads. And we get up, and John Archibald taking the mic and going, "My dad was black." It's just bottles coming at us, and people cornering us in the parking lot. People don't realize it was dangerous then, some of these gigs. I didn't realize it then, but just, and Marco Zaya swinging a mic stand and a bunch of guys who were like surrounding him. Crazy. You could get hurt at these gigs.
Yeah.
Or going to Miami, just wandering around in probably some pretty dangerous places, not even knowing.
Right.
Playing crazy gigs. It's great. I'm glad I lived it. It's all a blur though.
Yeah.
Fun.
Fun times. When it comes to art, is there any project that you are, would love to do, something you wish kind of landed on your desk there that you really would enjoy doing that you haven't done yet?
Hire me. There's a bunch of them. Hire me. Who knows? I like something that lands on, someone texts me or gets a hold of me and wants to do something that I'm unfamiliar with. An example would be doing a poster for the Decemberists, that band.
Sure.
I knew nothing about their music, but for whatever reason, I ended up doing something for them, and people liked it. I like taking on things that I'm unfamiliar with, learning about, and then trying to pull off something great.
Do those things typically snowball into other projects and hiring? Because, especially a band like that, they have a pretty big following of fans.
Yeah. Well, I was sort of known for doing lots of punk rock and rock and roll stuff. So, as an artist, I love beautiful things too. I like walking that line of maybe offending somebody. I don't set out to personally offend somebody,
Sure.
but if I'm doing something and I see a way that it might upset some snobs or something, I'll always do it. But, that's not why I'm doing this,
Right.
I'm doing it to do beautiful things, and humor. The sense of humor is the biggest thing in what I'm doing. To me, a lot of the stuff I look at, the rock poster stuff, I see the joke in it, the humor. Some people may not, but I do. They make me laugh. So, and that's important no matter what you're doing. You have to have a sense of humor about it.
I agree. Got to be able to look back and laugh at some point.
It's all a ride. Bill Hicks said that. It's just a ride, man.
He was a pretty smart guy, Mr. Hicks.
Love him.
Yeah. Anything you think about in terms of regrets, especially maybe in the earlier years and kind of knowing what you know now? Anything you would have done differently?
Well, we all would have, I think, especially when you get older. It's easy to say, "Oh, I should have done this." Not really. No. I think if I would have pursued art earlier, a little earlier, maybe would have been a good thing. I mean, we all have personal regrets, but really, no. I've had a really great life.
Yeah.
I always told myself if I was in music or art or acting, I'll be fine. And my parents were supportive of it always. No regrets.
Yeah. Awesome. Good deal. So I'm going to let you kind of close things out here. So anything you want to share with fans of yours from the past, from the present into the future? Anything you'd like to share to kind of close out the interview?
Well, I always like what Billy Joel said at the end of his shows. Don't take any shit from anybody. Never let them break you down.
Nice. And people can follow you. What's the best place for people to reach you?
Facebook, Instagram. I'm working on my website right now. I need to overhaul that. But these days, you don't need a website as much. It's all social media. So Instagram, Facebook. I'm not hiding.
You're out there for sure, Greg. So
I think we might need to wrap this up. I think I'm getting drunk.
I was going to ask earlier, well, what's in that cup? And we never got to that question.
I intended to have a little whiskey to kind of get loose, but apparently I got more than I should have, right?
You did well though, man. You did well. We got a lot of stuff out there. So Greg, so much appreciate the time today and doing this interview. And it's been wonderful chatting with you this afternoon. And best of luck. Continue with the art and whatever else comes your way. And just want to thank you again for your time.
Thank you, my friend. It's been a pleasure.
Be well.
You too.
Thanks, Greg. Bye now.